Hello team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine War Update Extra video, giving you extra nuggets and tidbits to get your teeth into to give you a greater understanding of the war in Ukraine. It's been a beautiful day today. I'm fresh in from painting a shed, and my goodness, I can barely stand anymore. My MS has got the better of me, so I thought now's the time to do a video. So apologies if I'm covered in paint, but you don't come to watch these videos to see whether I am paint flecked or not. These are a few days old, some of these bits and pieces, because I've got a bit of a backlog going on. So this is from Euromaidan Press saying tanks and artillery are fine, but expensive. Most cost-effective way to neutralize a maximum number of Putin's gang? Well, Ukrainian snipers. Every second bullet from a sniper rifle is a hit, and with thermals, 2 times a hit. Your investment is in a better world, just €2,000 to go. They're doing a fundraising project for some sniper equipment and obviously some thermals and whatnot. Now, this spoke to me because actually I've been saying quite a lot that really I would have spent, and I said this months ago, one of the most effective things surely would be to whack 500 snipers in Bakhmut and have them trained up over the last 6 months. Take a consistent number of good shooters, train them up, give them good sniper kit, and let them go for it in a whole bunch of places. For example, Bakhmut. Lo and behold, that's not too far away from what actually seems to have happened. There was a plethora of sniper video footage coming out now to show some very effective sniper activity from the Ukrainians, and it does appear to be that they've put a whole bunch of snipers in Bakhmut to take out the Russian attackers, and that's just a hugely sensible thing to do. Obviously, the Russians have got their own snipers, of course, as well. But I just think, strategically, right from the beginning, I would have been front loading a load of snipers into the theaters. Now, I know some people have said on the threads, actually, you can't just train snipers up like that. It takes an awful lot of time and effort and blah blah blah. Honestly, if you take even average shooters, like I'd take 10 average snipers over one amazing sniper. Yes, the stories of your man in Finland taking out 500 Nazis in the Second World War. I don't know if you're going to get that anymore, but seriously, a whole bunch of fairly average snipers are going to be something to contend with if you are attacking a particularly urban environments. Although I've seen an awful lot firing across. In fact, I've seen more, not necessarily in urban environments, but in kind of trench environments or at night where Russians have been advancing on positions and they've just been picked off, bang, bang, bang. And it's sad. Obviously, those human lives pretty much extinguished like that, and that's what you're watching. And you have to catch yourself sometimes because all of this footage feels like a computer game, and there's a very human element that we must remember. But at the same time, like if you don't do that kind of stuff, then you'll have your country invaded successfully by an aggressive force. And you can talk about whether those people really want to be there and all that kind of stuff, but they are there, and that's the nature of war. War is just horrible. But I maintain that snipers are incredibly effective and a massively cost-effective way of dealing with attackers, particularly at night. At night, if you've got good thermals, these people are lit up. Now there's stories that actually Russians are now wearing thermal blocking blankets, like kind of silver blankets you might have when you've got hypothermia or whatever. I presume there's something like that, but they're these thermal blocking blankets that the Russians are apparently using on the front lines now to block themselves from being spotted by drones, particularly, but also snipers as well. Anyway, moving on, that was just a bit of a random sniper sidebar. This is a war translated video from Dmitry saying, brothers morale high. Video from the other side shows Russian soldiers complaining about their command, about sitting in a trench for a month, barely shooting from their guns. All they're doing is retreating while being paranoid about drones and Ukrainian mortar fire. Now, this also talks to the idea. Dom Nichols said this again on Ukraine the Latest. He said this a number of times, which is war is, something like, there are several ways of saying this. It's war is when nothing happens for a long time and then everything happens at once, or basically you get bored for a huge amount of your time, and then suddenly you've got to do loads of stuff. So you're sitting around a trench for ages, not doing anything, and then suddenly it all happens. Although I do get the idea that there are also places on the front line where you've got trench warfare where you are just it's happening all the time. Bakhmut is happening all the time. There is no rest. There is no, it's not like these positional battles that may be taking place up in Vilshana or Kupiansk or wherever, where things are pretty quiet for a long time until they aren't. The place like Bakhmut, they appear to be pretty horrific 24/7. Now, I'm actually going to read the subtitles out again. A couple of people complain, why do you have to just let us watch this? An awful lot of people listen to my videos when they're doing other things in the kitchen, out in the garden, on the headphones, whatever. So I've been explicitly asked that I do read out subtitles, and I'm really happy to do so. So here is Dimitri War Translated taking a video and translating it. So this is someone in a trench saying an ATGM is here. Effers put it. Now they're shelling us with mortars, tanks, wanting to F it up. Right next to my effing trench. That's warline. That's wartime. Over there in the wood line are Ukrainians. The expletive for the Ukrainians sitting. He's looking over there. Soyoga here is sleeping. That's his mate. Over there is my hole, and he points to a pretty horrible looking sort of foxhole in the trench line. Like homeless, haven't washed for almost a month. I do wonder about that. I wonder about the cleanliness and how much soldiers in these conditions would really smell, or whether your body, I'm sure someone can answer this for me, whether your body gets used to it and you just live in this perpetual kind of skankiness, but actually, you just get used to it. You probably smell to someone else coming in, but yeah, just I wonder about toileting, about all the actual stark reality of living in a trench and how to go about your daily life. Anyway, he says, living like the homeless, I haven't washed for almost a month, and then continues. The forest is all effing destroyed, and he looks at these trees that we see so often in this kind of footage. They're just tree stumps, bare trees that have just been blown to bits, hitting us from mortars, tanks, while we sit here like rats. All our leadership are effers. These commanding all this, I only managed to shoot twice. We haven't even shot properly, but we already have 4 wounded. 4, Nuko, Lyonka, Edik, Tolyan. 4 wounded, 1 dead. These are just whom we know next to us. Over there are other guys. F knows what's up with them. But we're getting effing demolished here like cockroaches. We're stupidly sitting in these holes while being shelled from everything available. Our artillery are bastards. Look how the tank got effed. Even the roof came off. Over there, another trench. Our guys sitting there. Almost everyone from Omsk. They put an ATGM next to my trench. Now it's getting effed with mortars. Drones flying, dropping their grenades. Effing sick of them. Here, Maestro's coming. Have you a light on? I don't give an F. We all kinds of shit here. Sorry, I'm kind of choosing my swear words, aren't I? Quiet. Anything buzzing? Any drone nearby? I have effing buzzing in my ears. Move. Come the F down. Something like that. Guys, it's effing bad here. All they're showing on the TV is effing BS. Ours are only retreating. All the woodlines ahead were ours. Well done, Ukrainians. Expletive for Ukrainians. Ooh. You get the idea. This is just okay, anecdotal. Is it representative? Don't know. But here's one guy who is really, obviously, if you're talking about morale there sucks to be him. And it appears that they have been under the cosh there from all forms of warfare. And they've only shot twice. This guy's only shot twice. 4 of his guys are wounded. 1 guy's dead. Doesn't know what's going on or up the trench from him. Just, yeah, really not a fan of his command, and saying that what they see on TV back at home is BS, is not a true representation of what's going on the front. So, yeah, those videos are 10 a penny. I've shown you plenty before, but I thought I'd show you another one. Now, this is Vladimir Solovyov, who is your arch propagandist who is espousing genocide, so on and so forth. And here he says this is something from 2008 in a Moscow Arts Theatre. He says a war against Ukraine would be, quote, the most terrible crime you could think of. Wow, how times have changed. Again, I'm going to read this out. It'll be a little bit easier. He said, let me put it this way. There will never be any war between Russia and Ukraine, because any person who attempts in full seriousness to undertake such an act is a criminal. Putin, anyone? What's more, I can't even imagine how big a criminal. In Ukraine, there live people who are absolutely fraternal in spirit, blood, and common history. A war with whom would be the worst crime you could think of. We don't need to shout Sevastopol's ours. We don't need to shout Crimea's ours. We just need to make life in our country so attractive that Ukrainians, Belarusian, Moldovans, Armenians, Georgians, all of them want to live in peace with us and come to us. Holy cow, that is actually super, super on point. But that's not what he's saying anymore. And that 2008 Solovyov is a very different person from the modern Solovyov, who I presume is not calling Putin an outright criminal for doing such an act. But it's so important. This is true of if you're worried about immigration, you're not going to solve immigration problems if you're going around the world having wars around the world, right? I'm talking about places like Syria, Libya, so on and so forth. Getting involved in wars and then just leaving those places absolute hellholes. But also just generally economically, like people who want to come and live in other countries want to come and live there because it's better there and it's rubbish there. So the best thing you can actually do, and this is such a difficult thing to do, it's massive and it's almost undoable, but you need to make those places a better place to live. That's the only way. You don't just put up big walls. You don't, like, I've literally spoken to relatives who have said we should be shooting people in boats trying to get across the English Channel. I'm like, where is your humanity? Don't you understand? What would you do if you were them? Would you want to? Have you ever never? I've moved to this house because we wanted to move to a nicer place to have a better life for our children, right? Etc. Etc. So we move. That's what people do. They move places so that they can have a better life for them and their children. Right? Is that not what anyone would do? Now imagine you're living in a war zone. Would you not want to get out of there? If you're living in abject poverty, if your country is completely destroyed by X, Y, and Z, either economic or war or whatever it is, would you not want to have a better life for you and your family? That's a natural kind of instinct. Okay, so if that's a principle that you would adhere to, that you would want to do, then we need to understand the human element going on here. Well, how do we stop them from moving? We don't just shoot people in boats. We make their place a really great place to live, so they want to live there. Now, what Solovyov's doing here is saying we need to make Russia such an amazing place. So it's more talking about us. We want to make our country be such an attractive place to live that they would want to be part of us. So it's switching that whole immigration thing. It's like we actually want to attract them to us, or we want them to be part of this. So we need to make, so there's going to be like economics needs to play a part, welfare needs to play a part. Your standard of life, the cost of living, the quality of life, all these things need to be thought about really carefully, so that Russia is a beacon and people want to live in Russia. People want to be part of Russia. And then there won't be a war because it won't be us and them. They'll want to be part of us. And actually, that sounds pretty sensible. But instead, it was the money's being concentrated in the oligarchy, with amongst a very few in Russia, and it's not being distributed fairly amongst all of society, and it's not a place where people want to come and live. And so Ukraine is saying, no, actually, we're all right here. We like our own identity. We want to stay here. And actually, we want our independence, and we like that, so on and so forth. So Solovyov has got a point here, and Russia's done the exact opposite, which is, no, we haven't made really Russia any better or more attractive, but we're just going to invade you, and that's how we're going to get you to want to be part of us. And it's just, it's kind of crazy. Anyway, time to move on. Right, now to something completely different. I always say that, sorry. Members of the UFSIN Viking Spetsnaz, so these are special forces, Russian special forces unit, find a Kornet ATGM. This is a Russian anti-tank guided missile launcher. Let's see what these guys are up to. This is from Russia Today, some footage for them. And this is, I think, is it firing into Mariinka? I can't remember. Yeah, I think so. That is a fairly significant explosion. Now, that's fairly crumbled walls anyway, but yeah, pretty significant. That is an amazing bit of slow motion footage there. It's well worth seeing again, actually. Yeah. And these things can obviously do some damage. I do wonder how many of these sort of bits of kits, ATGMs of varying types, that the Russians have. Obviously, there are these claims that they're running out or they don't have as much of this or that. So I wonder for each different type of munition how much they do have. I'm actually not going to go through that one today. I'm just going to point you towards, because I'm going to be a little bit quicker today than normal. I'm going to point you towards a playlist on my ATP Geopolitics front page. So if you go to my front page and click on playlists, one of them that I add to every now and again are recommended Ukraine videos. So these are videos on Ukraine, and it starts with a couple that were really fascinating about the partisan activity in Kherson. Another one about the home front back in Russia by Sky News. Those three are just really good documentaries, and some other really good videos that I think you should check out. I've added 3 today. A really good interview with Stephen Kotkin about, he's a historian with a great knowledge of Russia, and a couple of Timothy Snyder ones, another historian with a great knowledge of the area as well. So some really interesting videos that I'd advise you go and have a listen to, have a watch. Just there for you. I'll continue trying to curate a good recommended video section there. And now just 2 more bits. This one very short, which is, I just like this. This is up in New York. Famously, Zelensky at the beginning said, "I don't need a ride. I need ammo." Or whatever he says, I need weapons, whatever it was. And now it's like, I don't need ammo, I need jets. And New York evidently know that that's the case as well. He needs those F-16s. So, you know, free the fighting Falcons, as Trentelenko says. Right, I'm going to leave you with the Ecuadorian UN diplomat. This is just a really good speech, stinging rebuke of Russia, really. And it was great to hear this coming from another country, a country that you might not have expected it to come from. And remembering that Russia still chair the UN Security Council at the moment, and that's just deplorable considering what they're perpetuating in Ukraine. Anyway, just worth listening to, so I'm going to play this one out.
Mr. President, what better result could this debate have than a decision on the part of your country to put an end to its military aggression against Ukraine in accordance with the decision handed down by the International Court of Justice on the 16th of March 2022? What better legacy could there be of your presidency than if your government chose to return to the path of peace and to withdraw its occupying troops? None of the pretexts invoked to attack Ukraine in violation of the UN Charter has legal merit. Not one of them. In this chamber, we've been told, for example, that the invasion of Ukraine is a response to a supposed phobia that exists of Russian culture. We've been told that this invasion is a response to a supposed Western conspiracy to weaken Russia. We've been told that Russia is acting in self-defense in response to anti-Russian policies imposed by Ukraine on certain inhabitants. None of these arguments have any grounding in the UN Charter. It goes without saying. We must remember that the Charter is one, indivisible and universal. Mr. President, there is not a United Nations Charter for the West. another for the East, another for the North, and another for the South. There is not a United Nations Charter for Muslims, another for Christians, and another for Jews. We also can't talk about a charter for Africa, another for Europe, or another for America, and so on. No, Mr. President. The charter is, I repeat, one charter. It is indivisible and universal. How could we neglect to recognize Russia's vast contribution, including that made by its major cultural torchbearers, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Pushkin, or Pasternak? But is there any way we could imagine for even a minute that those cultural envoys would be in agreement with the death and pain that this absurd war is inflicting upon millions of people? The concept note of this debate asks the question, how can the United Nations contribute to a smooth transition to a fair and equitable global order? I can assure you that war and violence will in no way lead us to a fairer and more equitable order. Quite on the contrary. Ladies and gentlemen, global military expenditure exceeded $2 trillion in 2022. That alone undermines the primary objectives of multilateralism and the goals of this organization: peace, security, sustainable development, and human rights. Worse still is the fact that we need to again recall that nuclear weapons have no place in a law-based international order. They defy the existence of humankind. Consequently, we cannot talk about effective multilateralism if we do not move towards effective arms control and disarmament. Even Article 26 of the UN Charter itself refers to the least diversion for armaments of the world's human and economic resources. Let us silence the guns and honor the promise of peace that we made in San Francisco. Let us honor our commitment to living side by side as good neighbors. What more fearsome enemy is there to multilateralism than treating the world as a risk board or any board game? That was the world view of the colonial powers of the 19th century, the world view of the fascist and Nazi regimes of the 20th century, regimes that invaded and
Just going to interrupt here because this is really interesting, because what he's saying really is that you are colonial. This is activity that you would expect in the 19th century. You're being colonial and you're being fascistic and Nazistic. Wow.
annexed other nations, subjugating them by force, and at times using shameful referenda to lend a veneer of legality to their actions. This practice.
Wow. I mean, this is where it gets funky. So I'm going to rewind that a little bit, because this is an absolute excoriation of Russia.
Neighbors. What more fearsome enemy is there to multilateralism than treating the world as a risk board or any board game? That was the world view of the colonial powers of the 19th century, the world view of the fascist and Nazi regimes of the 20th century, regimes that invaded and annexed other nations, subjugating them by force, and at times using shameful referenda to lend a veneer of legality to their actions. This practice is not only now incompatible with the United Nations Charter, it is also ethically unacceptable. Oof. Ecuador cannot remain silent in the face of this situation. As such, we are resolute in supporting Security Council reform and the establishment of a new agenda for peace. But let us make no mistake.
Security Council reform. This is a really big thing that they said. It's like, what Russia are doing is fundamentally at odds with the UN as in general, and with this Security Council explicitly. And the only thing, as many people have said, that can be done is to reform the Security Council. It is so important. Will it happen? How doable is that? Don't know. But Ecuador are properly bringing it.
Any institutional framework, however modern it may be, any planning tool, however strategic and updated it is, will be nothing more than an empty shell if they do not go hand in hand with a behavior change on the part of states. In this regard, the permanent members of the Security Council have the obligation to demonstrate responsible leadership which understands and respects the principle res communis omnium. According to this principle, the commons cannot be appropriated by one individual, because the commons are there for the common benefit of the international community. As was stated by Boutros Ghali, only one power can impose order on chaos. That is the power of the principles which move beyond changing opinions about what is most suitable in the short term. To conclude, I must recall that multilateralism is not an end in itself, but rather a means. However, it is something upon which women and girls in Haiti, Colombia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria, or Somalia depend. We all depend on it, and indeed all of our nations depend on it. Let us defend the UN Charter. Let us do so by practicing restraint and tolerance, by keeping and building peace. As was reminded by the Secretary General in his report on our common agenda, peace is a global public good that we must protect and manage. Thank you very much.
I think
This is a microphone. Boom. Drop mic, Ecuador. Boom. Have it. Have it, Putin. That is speaking truth to power. Ecuador, Russia, they're not in the same power league. Ecuador is bringing it. That was absolutely on point. Nothing I could disagree with there at all. You need to reform the UN Security Council, and Russia, you are completely ethically and legally at odds with the UN Security Council, decent moral behavior. What you're doing is not acceptable. Sort it out. And, you know, the more nations that say that, the greater that chorus becomes, and the more unified people are against such aggression. Anyway, that's me. Thank you. It's a bit of all over the place today. I don't know about tomorrow, as I've said. I'll try and get some videos done, but it'll be when I get back. In the meantime, take care, and I'll speak to you when I speak to you, obviously.